Hello and welcome to Unstress. My name is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I am recording this podcast, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Now today we explore how your face develops, or, like the vast majority of us in our modern world, underdevelops. The fact that over 90% of the population don't fulfill their epigenetic potential of facial and jaw growth. We've explored this in previous episodes, but 95% of us don't have enough room for all the teeth we've evolved to have. And that underdevelopment of the upper and lower jaws has implications on how well you breathe, how well you sleep, your posture, whether you suffer from chronic tension headaches, neck aches and jaw aches, and much, much more. My guest today is Dr. Mike Mew. Now, Mike is a lecturer and a lead clinician at the London School of Facial Orthotropics. Mike lectures and teaches extensively around the world. His personal interest is in the growth and development of the face, identifying the effects of changes in posture, function, and muscle tone and its relationship to orthodontic problems. Mike uses the orthotropic system, essentially a postural approach, to reverse the underlying conditions that lead to crooked teeth, also that affect sleep apnea, snoring, temporomandibular jaw problems, that is the jaw joint, among a range of other symptoms. He's undertaking research to investigate how to improve these systems using modern technology and innovative applications. His vision is a fully integrated biofeedback system that assists both children and also adults to improve their health. Now, as you will hear, Mike is passionate. And following on from his father, Professor John Mew, he is causing a revolution in healthcare and is pushing for a debate on what is actually causing crooked teeth with not just the orthodontic profession, but the health profession as well, because we're all in this. And if you think breathing and sleeping is important, you need to know why we have underdeveloped faces and jaws. The importance of environmental factors is clearly being ignored and could greatly assist not just orthodontic therapy, which any regular listener to this podcast will know as part of a bigger issue about how well you breathe and how well you sleep, and so in also your general health. Mike aims to change a section of modern medicine by making it evidence-based. What a wonderful idea that is, and what a challenge. And focused on the long-term health of patients, something we are all aspiring to. I hope you enjoy this conversation I had with Dr. Mike Mew. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you very much indeed, Ron. Pleasure to be here.
Mike, people take for granted certain things, 5 fingers on each hand, 5 toes on each foot. We actually have also evolved to have 32 teeth in our mouth. I'm just wondering, in your experience in the UK, I know you travel internationally, what percentage of people have enough room for all of the teeth that we've evolved to have, and why does that even matter?
Well, I think we need to define some groups here. The kids brought up in the UK today, very few of them. You know, I do see people with 32 teeth. Usually they were brought up in less soft, comfortable environments than we live here today. Particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, I see people with, I get to see fantastic dental arrangements and clearly with that facial structures. But in the UK today, I see very few kids who have space for 32 teeth. And remember that our ancestors, all our ancestors from all groups everywhere, always, and we're talking for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. So basically everyone till this blink of an eye modern environment not only had space for all of their teeth, but they had quite a lot of additional space as well. My father spent some time in Africa about 10 years ago, about a decade ago, and he did this little bit of research where he took a mole behind the wisdom teeth in people. And he said that when he was out in the villages and the countryside, he said everyone had 32 teeth and space behind the wisdom teeth. And that is exactly what we see with our ancestors, because, of course, I couldn't tell you if our ancestors had type 2 diabetes. I couldn't tell you if they had sleep apnea. You know, we don't think they did. But I can tell you exactly where their teeth were, or in effect still are, because we've got the skulls. So we've got these skulls, we can have a look. And they were almost like a different species than modern urban humans. And that, I mean, no one seems to be talking about this. You know, you can get an ancestral skull, you can get a modern urban human skull, and they don't look the same. I remember talking to a dental nurse. I remember talking to a dental nurse who did forensic dentistry at the weekends. And she said that the forensic dentist she was working with was saying exactly this, that the skulls of the modern individuals, I mean, he gets to see a few, you know, unfortunate people who died for some strange circumstances. He gets to look in places where most people wouldn't look. And he's saying these skulls look nothing like modern people anymore. Well, the skulls that he did his basic training on. So it's as if we've had this massive sea change in the way our teeth are. And, well, in reality, you've got a sea change in the bone structure. You've got a sea change in the whole of this structure. And we're getting these, you know, we're getting orthodontics seems to be going up at a rate of knots. You know, the need instance for orthodontics, you know, you can't open a magazine without everyone talking about orthodontics and advertising orthodontics. And no one stopped to say, well, hang around, that the incidence is going up, and why? Then something like sleep apnea wasn't in my syllabus when I qualified as a dentist in 93. Sleep apnea is now by some people estimated to be killing 20% of the population 10 years early. So you've got, you know, this rapid rise of sleep apnea. Then we get deviated nasal septums, you've got glue ear, you've got forward head postures, jaw joint problems. All of these problems associated with this complex, they're all rising up at an exponential rate. And no one seems to be paying any attention to this. And it's, I guess, a bit staggering, really, that no one seems to be interested in the change that's going on in our faces. Basically, it's in our face, isn't it? Right there, in front of us.
It's actually not. I've been reading Robin Dunbar's work on human evolution, and it's actually not just the lower half of our face and our space for our jaw. It's actually our cranial space as well. Anatomically.
Well, yeah, but Ron, this isn't evolution.
No, I know it's not. But as we moved from chimpanzees to Australopithecus to Homo erectus to, you know, our brain skull, our skulls increased, our brain sizes increased, and we got to a point where I think we were about 1,450 cc's, putting a figure on it. And I think now we're down to about 1,200 cc's. So we've actually gone backwards.
Yes, but Ron, what you're discussing is evolution, and this is something that happens over hundreds of thousands of years to millions of years. Yep. And this is what I'm seeing, or I'm identifying, because it's actually all there. Just open your eyes; it's obvious. Is a very, very different process for evolution.
Yes, I agree.
It happens far too quickly. I mean, for huge swathes of the modern population, we've gone from a subsistence farming to a modern environment in 3 generations. And that, you know, the evolution is nil point. It doesn't happen at all in that type of scale. Even for the countries where you go back to ancient Sumerian population. I mean, they were the first to become civilized, to be in cities and city dwelling. And well, that's all less than 10,000 years. There's nothing before 10,000 years. That's an evolutionary blink of the eye. No genetic change happens. Well, possibly we've got a little bit of lactose tolerance and maybe some alcohol dehydrogenase. But those are the sort of minor chemical, biomechanical tweaks that have gone on. Nothing like an extra tooth or one tooth too less.
But and I agree. I totally agree with you. I think though what explains it is an epigenetic change for a gene to either express itself or not.
No, no. These are pure environmental changes.
Agreed.
Sorry, if you get unfit, no one's shouting epigenetics. You're unfit because you're sat on your ass.
Right. Okay.
Sorry. So facto, that's the limit. It's because you look. If you want a strong jaw, use it. You know, I've got a strong jaw. I've got strong jaw muscles. That's it. Simple. You don't have to go to epigenetics. You don't have to think of anything complex. Use it or lose it. We're eating soft food. Food's so soft we don't use our muscles. Because we don't use our muscles, we don't build a strong jaw. Simple. Yeah. Or we get blocked noses. If you've got a blocked nose, you have to become a mouth breather. You have to drop your tongue that's supposed to be glued to the roof of your mouth. Yes, holding the top section of your face up. If your tongue's hanging open and your lips are apart, your face is going to lengthen. These are simple reactions that are occurring because we're just not living the lifestyle that we were evolved to live. This is a genetic mismatch between how we evolved to live and how we are living. And we're living in this incredibly soft modern environment where, you don't have to walk, you become unfit. It's not, you don't need to search for answers. This is really simple and obvious. And of course, we've got these weak muscles. We're hanging our mouths open. The effect is a bit like the whole of modern humanity has had a mild bilateral stroke and our whole faces have dropped down. And as the faces have lengthened, they've become narrower, they've become shallower. That's a reduced cross-sectional area at this level. If I took a samurai sword and went like this, I look down at that level, what you're going to see is less space for the tongue, less space for the airway, and less space for the teeth. Now, clearly I'm an orthodontist, so I came into this looking at teeth, or my father even came into this looking at teeth. But I think we'll agree your airway is more important than your teeth.
I agree.
And that's what's gaining more attention in this area. But it's only one area. I'm really very impressed with the book Breath. Was it Breathe by
Breath. James Nestor.
Breath. James Nestor. I mean, really good book. It's got me in it. And it's talking about the subject, but it's coming very much from the breathing side of it. We've not got on to talk about forward head postures. We've not gone on to talk about other ENT problems or jaw joint problems or these other problems, all of which are going up at this exponential rate. And I worry my profession, the orthodontic profession, is too busy making money to really get concerned about the causes. Prevention, treating causes is not profitable.
Well, Mike, I love the passion, and I know that you and your father has developed a whole approach to this, which is called Orthotropics, and I'm sure you have.
Well, it's called the approach is called BioBlock.
BioBlock, okay.
Any orthotropics is a generic term. Orthotropics is a term that means trying to improve growth.
Okay.
Orthodontics is trying to improve the alignment of the teeth. Orthos, which means correct or straight. So orthos, correct or straight, teeth is orthodontics, which is trying to make the teeth straight.
Yep.
Orthos or correct or straight growth is trying to improve your growth pattern. So any technique that tries to improve your growth pattern, such as stand up straight and shut your mouth. Great technique. If you do this, your face is likely to grow downwards. If you do this, your face is likely to grow more forwards. The more forwards it grows, the more cross-sectional area you have, the more space for your teeth, your tongue, and your airway. It's not complex. But what I'm saying directly conflicts with, well, when you start really thinking about it, it's directly conflicting with a large chunk of modern medicine and a large chunk of how we feel. Sometimes, when you open that Pandora's box, you don't realize quite how much is in there to come out. And it also directly confronts with most people's thinking. Most people like to think that the way their face grew was predetermined. In a way, it is you. What part of your ID card do people look at to confirm it's you? Well, it's the photograph. Often I see people or companies asking for photo ID. So you're being recognized through your photograph. For me to tell you that photograph of you is distorted, your face is distorted, it's an uncomfortable thing. Ron, your face is distorted.
I know that. I know that. I don't take that personally. Yes. No.
And I could say that to more or less everyone I see. And I walk down the street and I'm amazed at what I see in everyone. And then it comes on to that incredibly emotive subject of beauty. Put simply, people whose faces grew well look good because they have good structure. And what I tried, so my objective with this treatment called BioBlock Orthotropics is not to make people's teeth straight. Well, we know that people whose faces grew well, as a general rule, people with good facial growth, that look good looking for this crazy, whatever term, they tend to have straighter teeth. People whose faces didn't grow as well tend to have crookeder teeth. I'm saying that crooked teeth is one of many different symptoms. A face that grows well is healthier than a face that doesn't grow as well. It looks better because we tend to be hardwired to be attracted to healthy people. But my objective is to improve the facial form. I'm not really, yes, I'll try and make teeth straight. Yeah, I'll try and make them. I want to give people 6 straight upper front teeth. Great. That will be my objective. But my main objective is to improve facial form.
And what
with the general premise? Sure. So general premise that if you've got a better facial form, the teeth will tend to stay straight. I think, all of this idea of permanent retention, it worries me a little bit there. But anyway, Sorry, Ron.
No. Well, I was going to ask, how do you define good structure? You've talked about, and for our listener, because this is both audio, sometimes only, and video and audio on YouTube. That's a commercial for our YouTube channel. When you were opening your mouth and having your mouth open as a breather, you were describing a long face. And when you closed your mouth, you were implying that was better structure. And that is true. I agree with that. But let's just spell it out for our listener so they know what you would describe as good structure.
Okay, so if you imagine some guy walking off the African Serengeti, Amazon rainforest, or the Australian outback, any of these indigenous groups, remembering, of course, that as soon as you have a knife, a steel blade, even a ceramic or flint blade, you've significantly changed your environment. And what we see as traditional peoples today are rarely that traditional. I see most of them have got a few manufactured garments, and they have knives, and I have a few things that have already had a major impact on their lifestyle. But as a general rule, these guys have got good bone structure. They stand up straight. They've got great bone structure. They have, you see the cheekbones, you see the strong jaw lines. This was just almost normal in these ancient hunter-gatherer populations. And that progressively changes. The face of modern humanity progressively lengthens, and as I refer to downswings, it sort of swings back and down with the mid-face dropping down, you're losing cheekbones. The nose looks relatively bigger. The cheekbones look flatter. And then underneath this all, the jaw, which is hinged at the jaw joint, hinges open back and down, carrying the tongue back into the airway. Now, the thing is, as this occurs, if someone's face grows well and it grows forwards and upwards with good cheekbones, good square, a variation on that sort of Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt's type face, I mean, for argument's sake, there's a variation around that well-grown facial form. Clearly, individual groups would have been different, but not that different. You go back to ancient populations and they are surprisingly similar, but for surface features, they are very, very similar. Then we moved into this sort of, I would say, subsistence farming period, and it almost as if each different group morphed into something that was more different, more variable. So groups tended then to look more different in that phase. And it's almost as if the way that we've gone wrong is very dependent on our genetics and our gene background, and maybe our society, maybe our habits. So it's interesting play between genetics and the environment, that the cause of this problem is clearly the environment. But the way that we have gone wrong seems to be under strong genetic, have a strong genetic influence, let's say. I think, language, how we sit, whether you squat or whether you sit properly, properly as a Anglo-Saxon norm, a modern norm, and a chair and a table, or whether you have certain vowels in your language, what types of foods you eat, habits and patterns, I think all play their role, but faces aren't growing right. And it's clear and obvious. This comes from all of the evidence. I mean, the speed at which this change has occurred, it's impossible for that to have been evolution. The way it's patterned across, you see, the rapid rise of crooked teeth and changes in bone structure in places, years ago, you see it in Inca tribes and then reversing. You see it in some of the Roman tribes in Rome, and then sort of going back slightly after Rome fell. And you see this epigenetic, epigenetics became a big issue during COVID, and we all talked about epigenetics. So what was your epigenetic symptoms of what we refer to this overlying problem we call craniofacial dystrophy? So faces not growing correctly is called craniofacial dystrophy. That's the disease that most people have who have never heard about it. And crooked teeth is but one symptom. Sleep apnea is almost certainly another symptom. Forward head posture is another. I mean, clearly, mobile phones and tablets aren't helping this forward head posture epidemic, but most people try to stand up straight and fully chin tuck their head so it's balanced squarely on their spine, their chin's in their airway. So you can't maintain that position. So one of the reasons people have got a forward head posture is to open their airway up, take their tongue out their airway. And as much as you try and remind yourself to have a good body posture, if your tongue's in your airway, you're never going to do that. You can't override the desire to breathe properly.
Yeah. And when we say a fair percentage, I mean, in Australia, my estimation would be 95% of the people I see in my practice would fall into this category that you're talking about to one degree or another.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I remember reading some research done by Zackerson and Platow in Scandinavia, and this is back in the 90s, and I'm sure things were different in the 90s. And they found that less than 5% of the population had what they referred to as ideal occlusion. So that means they had all the teeth present, and they were all perfectly fitting together. And I didn't even see them mentioning wisdom teeth.
Yes.
You know, I mean, when and so you're talking a very small percentage of the population. What really interests me when we look at orthodontics is, you know, just the huge amount of there's so many telltale signs when you start lifting the hood of orthodontics. For example, we've made all these cephalometric norms. So we've taken these ideas of how heads grow. So, you know, orthodontics take this X-ray called a lateral ceph, and they start drawing all these lines on it. Well, the group selected to be the normals generally were people with only 28 teeth. I don't think of any group I know of that had 32 teeth. They were selected in the mid 1900s, and they were selected when we got this equipment. There's no suggestion from an anthropological perspective. There's no suggestion that these normal groups are ideal. And if you put your foundation stone in the wrong place, it's really going to mess with your thinking. And then we've got this concept of permanent retention now. People say to me, well, you know, just in the same way you need your hair redone, things change, you get wrinkles, and people are suggesting it's the same for orthodontics. And I'm thinking, so what madness are you talking about? I mean, I see people with wear facets that have had these wear facets for 30 years. And yet the change I see post-orthodontics bears no resemblance to what I see in people who, you know, I see lots of people when I worked in general dentistry who maintain perfectly straight teeth all throughout their lives.
Now, let me just stop. Let me just explain to our listener here what you mean by permanent retention, because a lot of people have had orthodontic treatment, but most of those people have had some, if not a lot, of movement of their teeth after the braces came off. And so permanent retention is about keeping either a wire attached on the inside of the mouth or a plate to be worn permanently at night.
Like Invisalign.
Like Invisalign. So this is what permanent retention is all about. And the question is, why do teeth move? Well, why do they move in the first place? Why aren't they in the right position in the first place?
Well, because there's an imbalance. We know the teeth sit in an imbalance between the lips and the tongue. Clearly, there's some form of imbalance. You know, you've got this whole school of myofunctional therapy attempting to retrain people to have their teeth in a better, you know, trying to change these balance zones. And yet we seem to be putting braces or fixed appliances or Invisalign on thousands and thousands of kids, not attempting to retrain this balance zone, and then putting retainers on them afterwards. And a general, you know, orthodontics teeth go back to where they came from. If you haven't corrected the problem, the underlying cause, then they're going to go back to where they came from. And that's exactly what we see.
So, Mike, I mean, you've made a very compelling description of the problem.
But also, Ron, my concern is where this attempt to hold teeth out from where they want to go is almost certainly holding them out of this balance zone. You can hold the teeth, but you can't hold the underlying bone. And with that, I spy problems coming on the horizon.
No doubt. But I wanted to look at now the concept of orthotropics, and we don't need to go into detail. The BioBlock, yes. We don't need to go into detailed, description. But what is the basic principle that's different about the approach of the BioBlock in the treatment of this problem?
I don't try to make teeth straight. I mean, I heard them in approximately a position, but it's a game of two halves, and half of the time is gaining change. So what I'm saying is that people walking into my office are going to struggle to swallow correctly. They're going to struggle to keep their mouth closed. They're going to struggle to do all of these things because they now have a structure that impedes that. So because they've hung their mouth open, because they've got weak jaw muscles, their face is lengthened, the reduced cross-sectional area, they're now going to struggle to exhibit the correct function and posture because it's now uncomfortable to do so. Now, in theory, were I to plug into the back of their cerebellum like they did in the film The Matrix, and I would hardwire good posture, in theory, they would gently correct in the same way as were I to cut the nerves. If I cut your trigeminal nerve, the nerve that powers the chewing muscles, not the facial nerve that does facial expression, which is the normal one affected with stroke. No, the really big power one. Your face would drop like a stone. There's no one would question that. That's an absolute fact. So if your face was to drop one side of it like a stone after cutting those muscles, well, why can't we improve the function of those muscles and change it in the opposite direction? You know, that's the premise. And if I could plug into your cerebellum and hardwire that and just say that ipso facto is going to happen, then that's all I would need to do. But if life was so easy, I could upload some Latin. I could upload some.
There may come a time. I don't think we may not be
there
far
may
off that.
come a time.
I've never realised how prescient the Matrix actually was. I feel like I'm living in it sometimes myself. But this applies. So just to continue, because I'm on that thread. Okay.
So I'm saying that if I could hardwire someone to do it, that's all they would need to do. But the structure they now have, like the structure you have, has been informed by your posture and function all your life. So you've created that structure with your posture and function. So it's going to be very hard to go to a new posture and function, since your current posture and function is the most comfortable, and we are creatures of comfort. You're probably sitting comfortably at the moment. So the first thing I want to do is change the dimensional space, form and function, this interplay. So what I do is I expand greatly, improve the nasal capacity so people can breathe more comfortably through the airway, widen the top jaw massively. I'm not widening this to fit the teeth in. I want to go way over the top so that I can gain a real change in form and function. People's posture, function over time. That's what I get the change in. Then, having gained this massive change, so people could improve, possibly not perfect, but certainly improve and change their posture and function. I then put in a device, and I've got an example of that device here. You see, you don't see much on the outside, but on the inside, you see these two fangs. And they're simple, these two fangs. They fit in underneath here and underneath here. If you drop your jaw down, it's gonna hurt. Now, that's going to change you a little bit. You know, I say it's a bit like I lend you a big belt buckle with a spike that comes up just to here in front of your chest. Now you're going to drop down, that's going to hurt. Now you're going to change your posture. Now, I don't know of easier ways. And then you wear that appliance all of the time. So, and you've got to do this really before you're 10.
Right.
So that's, I want to get growth going.
Even when you're eating, you don't eat.
No, you do take it out. You've got to wear it all the time, but eating. And this is this treatment can't be for everyone. I'm not trying to propone or promote this treatment. Actually, it's got to be prevention. That's what we've got to look at. Because I'm seeing all these school kids sitting there going, if someone was to tell them to stand up straight and shut their mouth, that would go to a long, long way to reducing these problems. And as much as we've tried with this treatment, it's not going to be for everyone. It's very labor intensive. So, and read labor intensive to doesn't make money. And that's why no one wants to take this treatment on. It's incredibly hard work. You need to change a child's posture. That's changing them. It's in changing their habits, in changing their behavior. And it is hard work to change behavior. It takes many hours over a long period of time. And read into that low profitability.
I was going to ask you, but you may have already answered that, how this has been accepted by your peers.
My peers are not, because what I'm doing is I'm we gain improvements in dental arrangement. Definitely I get 6 upper front teeth, but when you look in the mouth of one of my finished cases, you'll often see slightly rotated teeth, a few gaps, little problems. And the sort of thing that any orthodontist in the second or third year of university could fix. The crazy thing. And, here's the classic issue. A dentist is seeing his patients coming in. A patient comes in, they've seen us, and we've worked on them for, like, say, 4 or 5 years, because you need to follow a long period of time because growth doesn't happen quickly. This girl has great facial proportions, and but her teeth aren't that straight. Upper 6 front teeth, great, but there's a gap, there's a twisted tooth. The dentist looks at this and goes, those guys have been working for 5 years, and they can't even fix those little problems like this. God, they must be useless. How? Any orthodontic fool could get a better result. You put a light night eye wire, fixed braces, light night, you'd have a better job in 2 months. Probably actually would look perfect within 2 months. They don't realize that girl used to look like the backside of a bus, and she is now beautiful. I mean, literally, the change that we've achieved in that girl is beyond normal. But of course, the dentist doesn't have any photographs. He's not working. And of course, he intrinsically believes, like everyone else does, that your facial form's given, and that's it. And anyway, the next patient comes in. The next patient, perfectly straight teeth. The girl still has to wear a retainer every night to maintain that alignment, but that's what he expects. And he goes, now there's a good orthodontic result. He doesn't realize she now looks like the backside of a bus and was quite pretty beforehand. But he hasn't got photographs, so he doesn't see that.
Because ultimately,
now, I'm not saying orthodontics always damages facial form. I'm saying that that's an area I'm worried about. Because that means orthodontics could be making craniofacial dystrophy worse, the underlying problem, while treating the symptoms. And that always worries me.
I mean, I often say in my practice that the main reason for doing anything intervention-wise is to create more space for your airway and your tongue and your airway. Would you agree with that?
The main reason, well, this is because, Ron, we've got onto this airway kick, haven't we?
We have. Well, breathing's pretty important. Breathing well.
Yeah. But, Ron, that's true, but you're not saying you're doing that to improve head posture.
Well, it will. Hopefully it will in the process.
Hopefully it will. They're saying to open the eustachian tubes. You're not saying, or to improve the parasympathetic-sympathetic balance. And I think it's doing all of these things. We've got hijacked. Well, I mean, it's airways. It's important.
Airways are a big improvement. You'd have to say, Mike, it's a big improvement on where we were 30 or 40 years ago. Putting your father's work aside.
Yeah, I mean, Dad was trying to do sleep apnea in the 80s. Yeah, and everyone's now. And he got bored because people wouldn't change, and it just. They say that if you're a step ahead of the crowd, you're a genius. If you're 2 steps ahead, you're an idiot. You're a fool. And if you're 5 steps ahead,
Now, let me ask you a personal question here, Mike, because you grew up in this environment, and I would imagine that what I'm looking at now, as I'm seeing you on the screen, and I don't want to get too personal here, but you have grown up with a father who has been very aware of this and able to make structural changes. What's your assessment of your facial structure?
I've got better facial structure than my father, but remember, no one has the power to do it for you. They only have the power to help you to do it.
Yeah.
And not only then did I have the treatment, but I learned the lesson. And I had the knowledge that, again, stand up straight, shut your mouth. These aren't new concepts. If I'm going to make a plug here for anything, can I make a plug for the Prevent Crooked Teeth? If people can go and sign up on the website, I'd love that link there, Ron, if you could.
Yes, of course I will.
We're talking treatment, we're talking what my father did, but we've got to do prevention. None of this is new. All of those prevention strategies are as whole as the hills.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this great, we talk about myofunctional therapy. I say that half of myofunctional therapy could be gleaned from simply closing your lips while you're eating, or getting your children to do this from a young age. That's 50% of myofunctional therapy down the line. It's not complex, because you sit opposite your child saying, shut your mouth. And that's what it often takes, literally sitting there, engaging with the other person. Just engaging with your child, spending some time doing this.
Yes.
But, we talk about the fact that if you have, if you do a brisk 10-minute walk every day, it will reduce your chance of getting a heart attack by a lot. Really makes a big difference. So if I could get a young growing child to do 30 to 40 minutes of, preordained exercise, that would be phenomenally profound. I mean, mind-blowingly profound. Well, okay, so we're using this complex when we're eating. So let's have the mealtime exercise. So super secret, don't tell anyone wrong. The mealtime exercise, it is sit up straight, elbows off the table, eat with your mouth shut, chew your food properly, don't speak when you're eating, food to you, not you to your food, and chin tuck when you go to swallow. So pause, chin tuck, swallow. Now, actually, I'll let you a bigger secret. That's not a secret.
Yes.
That is probably the least secret exercise on this planet. Confucius was saying that 3000 BC, or was it? Anyway, a long time ago, as were the Victorians. As interestingly, the parents of every single family from whatever culture that has ever come in for a consultation with me recognize that exercise from their cultural history. Now, when I put it like that, you've got to think, whoa, our culture's separated before we had tables and chairs. So either that's magic, or there's a really important reason all our ancestors were doing that. And back then, if someone's face didn't grow well, it was more obvious. That adenoidal face, that village idiot, the one that hangs, close your mouth or the wind will change and your face will set like that. Yes, remember all that. So, and that is, and when we're talking about the village idiot, well, we know that if you're very downswung, extreme downswung people, you've got the adenoidal face type pattern, you've probably got, almost certainly, you've got sleep apnea. Well, sleep apnea massively affects cognition. I mean, something crazy like 10 IQ points. And there you've got the village idiot. And we know from cranial osteopathy how the bones would tend to move. I'm not going to validate cranial osteopathy here or craniosacral therapy, but they give some idea as to how the bones would move, and the temporal bone would move in that scenario to make the ears stick out. Oh, then we've got the village idiot. It all pieces together. And lots of people are catching up. You've got James Nestor's book, you've got Jaws, but these literally, Jaws was lifted from my father's work.
Yeah, this is not, incidentally, Jaws, the movie Steven Spielberg. It's Paul. No, hang on. It's Paul Ehrlich's book, and I interviewed him and his co-author Sandra to find out. I couldn't resist talking to a Professor Ehrlich. It was too compelling an opportunity.
Yeah, no. I like Paul. Really nice chap, actually.
Yeah,
really nice.
No, he's a very nice fellow.
Yeah.
But
again,
preventing crooked teeth. Well, you've just given me the name of this podcast, but if you had to give of this episode rather, but if you had to give people, well, you've mentioned it, keep your mouth closed and chew your food. What other things could or should people be doing to prevent crooked teeth?
Well, okay, lip taping kids and chewing gum. Two things that most parents would go, oh, tape the lips of my child, but they'll suffocate, they'll die. No, they don't. I remember taping up one of my kids. I thought that's a really good lip taping. Walked to go to the bedroom and they went, "Oh, Daddy, I'm thirsty." I'm thinking, how did you speak? I've just taped your lips up. They go, they're not, crazy suicide individuals. Humanity, they're good at surviving. They've done a really good job of it.
And remind us, Mike, why the taping of the mouth at night, presumably, is such a great idea.
It forces nasal breathing and it forces you to keep your lips closed. It's a simple thing that you can do. Use it or lose it. Use your nose or it will stop working. I mean, I remember Christian Kimono going on about the importance of just continual nasal breathing. And it really works. Nasal breathing does work. It is vitally important. If you're going to do nasal breathing, take some sort of micropore tape or anything for the nighttime. But start with a tape like this one. This is my favorite tape here.
What am I looking at?
That you could use. Well, there we go. It's that tape there.
Micropore silicone, yes.
Now, use that during the daytime first. So if you allow your kids to do any screen time, use that tape during the daytime first. And the beauty of that tape is you can peel it off the mouth, you can stick it onto a window and pick it back on the mouth again later. It will do about 2 to 3 attempts. But it means if you've got a couple of bits of tape on the window, you can peel them off very quickly and put them on kids' lips.
I think that I love that idea because we recommend it for nighttime use, but I will adopt that for a daytime screen time. Wonderful idea.
Screen time use.
Yep.
So what we do with before you lip tape at night, make sure you've got quite a lot of lip taping in during the daytime. Okay. The kids are happy with it. And what you do, you use screen time as the your test bed. So you get them with screen time. And another thing is, if you see your child sitting here, watching their screen, and they've got the lips open, you just go, they put their lips together. They stand up straight because they have to, because they want to see the screen.
Yeah.
There's no point you saying close your lips because they're so engaged in the screen they won't hear you. By the time you've said it 3 or 4 times, you're getting annoyed. Then you're annoyed when you talk to them. Then you have this aggressive, annoyed, raised tension, engagement with them. And then you get annoyed. Whereas you simply put your hands in front of their eyes. They know what to do. You know what they know what you anyway. Yep. They then get their lips together, and and now you're building up a pattern of behavior.
Yep.
So start with that lip tape, then go on to micropore at night. And then I had a little thing that they were allowed to get up early, go downstairs and watch a device until we got up to do breakfast, as long as they still had their lip tape on.
Right.
If I got downstairs and found the lip tape wasn't on, then I'd just confiscate the device. So then they had a need to have that device on, and you can do that, let's say, weekend morning. Then chewing. Go and get some medium or tough chewing gum. There's lots of different ones with different, without aspartame or this or that, and chew gum from when they come home in the evening till they go to bedtime. And I'd recommend you can try and start most of that from around 4 to 5 years old. I don't really push people at an age below that, but around 4 to 5 years old, you can start lip taping and chewing, and then from the start go, I would recommend baby-led weaning and avoiding any form of soft food. If you need to put food in a spoon, then you shouldn't be giving it to your child.
Okay.
But if you continue with breastfeeding for as long as humanly possible, and that's exclusive breastfeeding, so nothing else.
Wow.
Not for everyone, but if you want to follow, you want your child's facial growth to be really good, breastfeed exclusively with no dummy, no bottle, no soft baby food that needs to go on a spoon. And you then just introduce hard foods. So you start implementing hard foods, and that's it. And then you gently swing across to normal feeding. Breast is really good for making a child breathe out their nose. And now, my second child did use a dummy, a pacifier, as they call it. And I actually feel that we pulled that away too early, because when she had the pacifier in her mouth, she kept her mouth closed and breathed through her nose.
Mm.
And it's interesting. I don't, there's no rule book of life.
What about thumb sucking? What about thumb sucking?
Well, there's two ways of thumb sucking. You either have this active thumb sucking where kids are really pushing up and forward. And I've seen kids who've really developed lovely maxillas, fantastic cheekbones from thumb sucking, really done a good job.
Wow.
Right? And it hardly affects the dental position at all. Then I see kids doing this sort of, it was passive, very low tonus thumb sucking, and that I've seen destroy faces, and that's where you get the asymmetries, But I hear of indigenous American tribes where thumb sucking was enforced for the entire tribe.
Wow.
And no problems.
Wow.
Now, I don't have hard scientific evidence of that,
yeah.
but it's one of those hearsay things. And, I guess I shouldn't parrot hearsay because it's very unscientific of me. But it seems to ring some truths there. And it's something when I've got the heat off me, so I've got a lot of heat on me at the moment, but when the heat's off me, this is my mission. My mission is to bring the spotlight of modern medical science to bear on these problems.
Yeah. And
that's
good,
what we need.
So good to get in and prevent them from happening, because it's quite a complex issue to correct them.
Yeah, but it's not just prevention, because, Ron, we've got to think about that cohort that avoided prevention. Think of those young kids who were forced to have orthodontics by their parents. Their parents didn't understand the consequences and implications and risks of the orthodontic treatment.
Yes.
Those kids are now being forced to wear retainers. They never really wanted the orthodontics. They certainly never realized they were being signed up to lifelong retention. Some of them may have been damaged by this process. They may have gained a further downswing from the mechanics, how they responded to the mechanics.
Well, if they ended up with straight teeth and smaller jaws, they definitely, were sold short there, because they were set up with.
Ron, where do you place this? This was this controversial topic. My father said on dispatches in 1998 that orthodontics can damage faces.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the orthodontic community ever forgiven him for saying that.
No, it's very confronting. Another word that I know is you using mewing. Tell me about mewing, or have you already told me about that?
I've not really told you about mewing. So what I've done is I've put my thoughts and ideas out on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I had already put out quite a few videos of my exercises for my patients, because it's massively time consuming to train people to do, have right oral posture and function, and, to try and encourage them to have correct body posture and function. It's just a very time consuming thing to do. And of course, something that's time consuming doesn't make money. That's simple business concepts. So I put this stuff online. I was then asked to give a lecture for something called the 21 Convention, which was, it's a good lecture, look it up, Mike Mew 21 Convention, if you've got some links, put it in. But it's a sort of video I wouldn't actually have given you if I'd properly checked them out, because half of the lectures were on something called pickup artists. I'd never even heard what pickup artists were, but, these are guys that give clues and tricks to young kids on how to chat girls up.
Oh, right. Okay.
And another chunk of these lecturers was on bodybuilding and how to look good, and, personal grooming. It was very male orientated. It was very, I forget the sort of PC words to describe it. Anyway, I wouldn't have ever given this lecture. But anyway, it was very convenient, really convenient. It was literally in Charing Cross. My girlfriend, now wife, was working in Covent Garden, and it was literally next door to where she was working. And the timing was literally just as I would normally go into London to pick her up and maybe go out and do something. So it was just like this, wow, that is convenient timing. And they said they'd record it professionally and put it out. So I did this lecture, and I laid down what I'm saying about craniofacial dystrophy, about how faces grow or they don't grow correctly and how that causes problems, and that I have a treatment to correct that, and anyone with good oral posture should be able to do that. And the lecture went well. It's a lecture I've given before, but mainly to dentists. At the end of the lecture, I was mobbed by the crowd. And they were saying, how can we make ourselves look better? And I was, well, God, it's incredibly difficult to try and do this. You know, you'd be almost crazy to try because it's so difficult to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I guess, you're not doing anything else with your mouth. You're not doing anything else with your tongue. The potential rewards are enormous. So you might as well give it a go.
Mm.
And then I noticed a few, we had an alert out on my name. So I noticed a few people talking about me in places. And we then engaged with them and gave them, you know, people asking questions amongst themselves. So I came in and I went through a list of questions I'd asked and gave responses to all of these questions. And these definitely were in some of the darkest areas of the internet. And we thought about it. And at the time, well, I had nothing to lose. You know, I wanted to get this message out there. So I engaged with these people in places where I'm sure some PR agent would now warn me never to tread.
Mm-hmm.
However, we tried there, we gave responses, and I made some videos asking specific questions. And I was just trying to raise any interest in this subject to me that is so clear and obvious. And no one in medicine seems to be interested. And, you know, I'm just saying, you know, I've been hounding the powers that be in the UK for a decade to have a debate on why teeth are crooked.
Mm.
You know, a fairly simple thing. I started in, I wrote an editorial called A Black Swan, you know, playing on the concept of Karl Popper's Black Swan. More than clearly the credit crunch came and people started talking about black swan events, which sort of changed the meaning of that phrase. But anyway, a black swan is one of those scientific things is you cannot prove anything. You can only disprove something. So, you know, if you all thought, you know, if you went around Europe, you'd think all swans are white. So you could make a hypothesis that all swans are white. However, you go to Perth, and what we've got black swans. But no amount of research in Europe could ever conclusively prove that black swans don't exist because they're the other side of the world. So, and that's the philosophy that Karl Popper came up with. And if you followed Karl Popper's logic of science, we wouldn't be in this situation. That's why I'm asking us to review the ancient rules of science and to have debate. Yes. So I tried to push my profession into a debate on why teeth are crooked. I went to lengthy explanation to say, look, we need to have a debate. We need to follow the scientific process. That's all I'm asking for is science. You know, any professor on this planet, come engage with me. Anyone, please, don't be shy. Science is about engaging, having debate. And you can't just, you know, the only way people have of responding to me is to run away, to refuse to engage with me, to prevent us from speaking, to prevent us from publishing. That's the only response. Sorry, I'm going off course here. So I've already been doing this and I got invited to this lecture. I gave this lecture, Mewing, just as the profession seemed to be so blind, so deaf, so unwilling to speak to me. The general public lapped this up. And I mean, I was advised just a little before I gave this lecture, I was advised to go on social media. And it was by a patient's mum. I treated her second child for free, and she helped get me going with social media. And she sent me a message just recently, and I'll see if I can find the message, because it really interested me what she was saying, because it was, you know, she said, hi, I hope this text finds you well. I was on TikTok tonight when I saw a Mewing video randomly came up in my news feed. The hash had 875 million views.
Wow.
Now, that's just I don't know how that hashtag is outside of TikTok or just in TikTok. I think it's just in TikTok.
Yeah.
That's just English language speaking.
Yeah.
Now, when you stop to think about it, we've been talking about within the non-mainstream orthodontic world. And we've had, whenever I go to these meetings, everyone says, oh, we've got to get the information out there, how people don't understand what we're talking about. And I've often thought to myself, yes, great, you need to get information out, but what information? Because what I like about orthotropics, it's got a pathology, it's got an epidemiology, it's got an etiology. It's a proper science. Orthotropics is, it answers the questions. You can didactically test it and rationale with it. Modern orthodontics and many of the other non-mainstream ideas don't have that.
Yes. Well.
However, that alone, Mewing, and with that, of course, Mike Mew, she goes on to say that a hashtag with my name had 17.5 million views.
This is my brush with fame, Mike.
I mean, this is my brush with fame. I mean, hey, I wasn't expecting this. But, I went on holiday to Spain last week. Where was I? I got chatting to a group of kids on the beach. They were playing I was pushing my daughters on the swings, and I got chatting to the guy standing beside me. And he had just started mewing 2 weeks before, and so had some of his mates. And they all came over and we had a chat, and they were, wow, we didn't even know that, we knew there was a Mike Mew somewhere, but, didn't ever expect to meet him. I chatted to the lifeguard, who was a medical student, and one of the other lifeguards, he said, oh, yeah, she recognized you when you came down here. We're packing up the car. Someone comes back, hey, hi, Mike Mew. And this is in Spain. This isn't even included in those hashtags because this is Spanish language. And when I go through my YouTube channel, I saw this metric with thousands on it. And I thought I'd never been into that segment of the back end before. And it was on copyright conflicts. And I couldn't believe how many copyright infringements. How many copyright infringements? I mean, literally tens of thousands of people had copied my videos. And they'd put them up in all kinds of languages with all kinds of different subtitles in, Russian text. In
so how many
Japanese
how many is it a video or is it a series of videos?
No, most of them.
Pardon?
Most of them. Most of my videos.
So coming back to the question, and it's an extraordinary story, and I almost feel like at this point I should insert at least one of those videos for people to see. Is it one video or is it a series of videos? Is it exercises? That's what it is, basically, isn't it? Mewing.
Okay, so mewing is, I'm about to release a series of videos on mewing. Mewing are generated from the few videos that I had put up for my patients online.
Right.
On our little YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Someone had also given me some advice to put up videos that were on different topics, like what is an overjet, what is an overbite, what is this? And that was roughly around the same time because this woman had got me going. So we were putting videos out on what's an overjet, what's an overbite, and then I put one up on our technique of how to swallow, how to do this, how to do that. So things were running in sort of parallel on the YouTube channel. There was enough information for people to get going with mewing, and after that, it's gone with its own fruition. It's gone crazy.
Yep.
It now has its own thing. I mean, I see lots and lots of people with videos. Oh, a year or so ago, I checked, but there was at least 10 videos giving explanation on mewing and how to do it that had been seen more than 10 million times.
And that explanation comes from you or someone else has taken it upon themselves?
I think the thing is that mewing works. Just as you have a stroke, and again, these are just on the facial muscles, your face will downswing and lengthen. If you were, especially if you're young, you're under 25, you've really got to be under 25. But if you're 17, 18 and you're focused, you will get noticeable changes. It works. It does what it says on the tin. And so I'm not, and I don't want to be the fountain of all knowledge. I want to be a scientist. I've opened people's eyes to this.
Yeah.
I want to find out the best ways of doing it. I can't not come out with all the methods and techniques. I mean, lots of other people are coming up with other techniques and methods, and great. That's fantastic.
And
that's what it takes.
And Mike, the basic principle of that is to get proper function of the tongue and the lips and the cheek and the swallowing pattern, which is what we do all the time.
I'd actually say better posture.
Better posture. Okay.
Better posture. When I go to these non-mainstream orthodontic groups, when I go to the rebellion groups, they go on about function. We talk about functional answers, and I'm going, no, it's posture. Function. To function is to do this. That's not going to change my facial form. Yeah. But if I did this all the time, then it is.
Yeah. Yes.
But posture is function over time.
Yes. Okay, I like that. Posture is function over time. I like that. And now listen, you've opened up a whole can of worms here talking about science, because my God, that's a whole story about pandemics and how the pandemic's been handled. Let's not even go there. Should we? I don't know.
No, I wouldn't cover that topic.
No, that's not.
I mean, there was a very good video I saw recently by a guy called John Campbell.
Oh, John Campbell is a legend.
It was called The Illusion of Evidence-Based
Medicine. We've covered that. You'd be very pleased to know I've covered that on my podcast. It's a BMJ article in April of this year talking about key opinion leaders and product champions. You'll have to go through the back catalogue, Mike, and look at some of my other podcasts, because I cover this topic extensively. Listen, we're coming to the end, and I have to say I have so enjoyed talking to you. I met your father, and I'm going to put a bit of that. We had only a very short discussion with your father, and it was lovely, because I think he's a legend. He literally is a living legend.
Yeah. I mean, the guy, he's not the easiest man.
I picked up on that. And I can recognize a family passion there.
There is a family passion. I mean, my personality had to evolve around his, and I'm used to working with someone who is very, he's self-driven but also self-centered.
Yes. Let's just leave that. And but I wanted to finish with one question, and I wanted you to take a step back from your role as an orthotropic orthodont. How would you describe yourself professionally?
I'm a dentist trying to find some answers.
Okay. I want us to take a step back from your professional role, because we are all on a health journey as individuals in this modern world. And I'm intrigued to know what you think the biggest challenge is for us as individuals on that journey.
Okay. Right. Ron, if I got run over by a double-decker London bus outside here tomorrow, I'd want modern medicine on my side. Antibiotics, anesthetics, we mustn't sort of poo-poo, we mustn't diminish our respect for the massive wonders that we've created with modern medicine. It is truly awesome. However, for acute medicine, it's absolutely brilliant what we've done. However, if I've got a chronic disease, so I've got a chronic condition, one could argue that modern medicine could very fairly put up its hand and say, look, we'd welcome alternative viewpoints and concepts on this. And I think they fairly should do that. I wouldn't say they fail, but we're not, by the definition, it's chronic. That we've not fixed it, we've not corrected these. And when you look at the actual cost of modern medicine, the cost is disproportionately skewed to trying to treat these chronic conditions. And apart from the diseases of aging, we're all going to get old. Apart from those, most of the chronic conditions are related to the mismatch between how we evolved to live and how we are living. In a way, it's our lifestyle and how we live our lives. And I think that we're reaching that limit between how this modern medical approach can affect these chronic conditions and how we, by lifestyle modifications, can affect these problems. And I think we need to redefine that balance and responsibilities and best methods. And I think we should look with fresh eyes on these chronic conditions, because we've got to look at them differently. We're not going to find the answers. They ain't going to come in a pill packet.
Well, Mike, that's a very important note to finish on, and I have so enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay, Ron, pleasure.
Well, I did say that Mike was passionate, and so he should be, because the implications of something we've just come to take for granted, as though, what's the big deal? I mean, if we all didn't have enough room for 5 fingers on our hands, and everybody had their 4th finger removed at the age of 18, I doubt whether we'd be taking this as casually as we do. And yet, the implications of this underdevelopment of the jaw are much more far-reaching than if we didn't have enough room for all 5 fingers on our hands. And yet that is the case. In my own practice, in every practice in dentistry, if I was to ask how many people, for every 100 people that come in to a dental practice, how many have all 32 of their teeth through and in perfect alignment, and, as Mike pointed out, even space behind the wisdom teeth. Now, what's the big deal there? This is much more than your ability to chew. You might say, oh, well, when we were hunter-gatherers, we really needed all of those teeth to chew. Well, the fact is the shape and size of your mouth determines the shape and size of your upper airway. And as another guest, Dr. Felix Lau, points out, we have a 6-foot tiger, our tongue, in a 3-foot cage. And that means the tongue is potentially going to interfere with ideal breathing. And that means sleeping as well, and that means posture as well, and that has a whole lot of flow-on effects. And of course, what a wonderful story about mewing. Now, I had the opportunity previously to talk to Professor John Mew, Mike's father, who is a legend in the dental world. I mean, he put the cat amongst the pigeons in the late 70s and early 80s by suggesting that the way orthodontics was conducted was wrong, that what we needed to do was develop the lower half of the face, and that means everything below the eyes. And that would have flow-on effects to our general health. Now, Professor John Mew is now in his 90s, and I recorded a short video there. And I will also, in this week's episode of The Healthy Bite, include a brief, some of that interview, and I'll also include a video on mewing. There's so much in this episode. Preventing crooked teeth. I hope this finds you well. I will, of course, have links to Dr. Mike Mew's website, and you can learn all about mewing and much, much more. Until next time, this is Dr. Ron Ehrlich.
This podcast provides general information and discussion about medicine, health, and related subjects. The content is not intended and should not be construed as medical advice or as a substitute for care by a qualified medical practitioner. If you or any other person has a medical concern, he or she should consult with an appropriately qualified medical practitioner. Guests who speak in this podcast express their own opinions, experiences, and conclusions.